Here we are doing a podcast about our podcast.
I know, right? So crazy. So starting a podcast was a really cool idea. It was a long time in the works. And once we finally kind of dove in and started recording and coming up with content and naturally just unfolding the Happy Clients podcast, it quickly became one of the best parts of my day. I don't want to speak for you, Taylor, but of course we know the podcast is a little bit business and pleasure because we both love it so much. Today, we're going to dive into how we started the podcast, how we create it, what it's used for, and everything Happy Clients podcast.
Welcome to the Happy Clients podcast, brought to you by Dot & Company. Whether you're a virtual assistant, an agency owner, or a client-facing account manager, we all deal with clients. Lucky for you, client management is what we do best. Now, let's dig in, chat cam life, and have some fun along the way. Cheers to Happy Clients.
So Katie and I talked about doing a podcast, I think, since day one. Maybe because we thought we were like little celebrities or something, but we just wanted to start a podcast and we talked about it for years. And then finally we were like, okay, enough's enough. If we don't just do this and try it, how will we ever know? Worst case, it flops and we stop doing it. So we get a lot of questions about how we went from 0 to 50 episodes so quickly. So I want to kind of paint the picture of how we started and how we edit and what we use it for. So like I said, we talked about it for a really long time. And I think for any business or agency owner, if you're an expert in any field, it makes it really fun to do a podcast because you're so comfortable talking about your niche or your topic. So for us, obviously, we're client account management experts, but that spans across so many different topics that we can talk about. So what we did was back in November, I think it was, Katie, we just set a date. We were like, okay, we're just going to sit down and we're going to record. And we typed out all of our notes to a T.
Yeah.
I think I spent like 4 hours like editing it.
We had pages of notes. I forgot about that.
And we were so nervous. I like ordered Katie and I podcast mics and we were like, okay, we're just going to do it. We were like, okay, do we use Zoom? I don't know. Anyways, it was really awkward at first. I don't know about you, Katie, but I
totally awkward. And I think Taylor said we thought we were like celebrities, but there was an element of that thinking that every time we get together, we're laughing and we're collaborating and we have this like really great time, usually centered around talking about work and client account management and what can we do, but also mixed with knowing that people wanted to hear us.
Yeah.
Just kidding. We always wanted to do it. And I think we did feel like we could do it, but it's hard to kind of get the gusto to like actually just dive in and start recording. So yeah, Taylor got us mics and we were super professional. I had my light right. We were reading our notes, like thinking we were the next celebrity for sure.
And now I feel like I could just grab the microphone and sit on the couch and podcast.
Yeah. And I think they come out a little bit better when we think of those kind of first initial ones that were maybe a little more scripted and a little more inorganic. The ones we come up with now are very real conversations and very real topics of digital marketing and client account management. And it comes off a little more genuine, which probably feels better for us and hopefully our audience as well.
Yeah. So for anyone thinking about starting a podcast,
your first one's not going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be terrible. Like just pick a date and it's so much easier to have someone to do it with. So if you can have someone to co-host with you, it's A, better for accountability, but B, just easier because like it's way harder to just sit there and talk by yourself. But yeah, so we do all of our recording right here on Zoom. We just send each other the invite. We usually block an hour. We used to use so much more time, but we just block an hour and we kind of do like 3 different topics within an hour. We record and then we upload it into an app called Descript. And then we hand it over to Carly on our team, our marketing manager, who edits and shares the podcast with all of you guys.
If we're talking about like tools that make the podcast easier and really efficient, I know that Descript is just a really solid piece of that puzzle, because it does make it easier on Carly, who's editing, easier when we kind of like, are goofy and silly and my mic's not on right. It just really like fixes it and makes it get to a place that is not only professional, but makes it easier. So the content that actually comes out is actually really awesome.
Yeah. And then when it comes to editing, we have an SOP for editing our podcast. Shocking. So we'll be onboarding an intern very soon. And so Carly will then transition that over to the intern because we have this SOP built. So coming back to client account management, this is something that we have within all of our agencies, is kind of that living, breathing document of how to be a client account manager in an agency. And then in this case, how to edit a podcast at Dot & Co. And then lastly, we get a lot of questions from our listeners on what we actually use the podcast for, mostly agency owners who are thinking about starting their own podcast. So it's kind of like a various different reasons. We didn't really know we knew it was for agency owners, but we didn't know kind of how much we would lean on the podcast for training. So we have a training component to Dot & Company where we train client account managers and we have our training program. So a lot of times there might be kind of a module about certain topics. And generally there's one or two podcasts that we have covered, either just Katie and I or someone from our team. And we will actually assign them that podcast to listen to kind of just elevate their learning. And it's very like real and live and in podcast form.
And I do think that, of course, when we're talking to agency owners, they're always saying like, oh yeah, I like listened to your podcast, or at least checked it out, just like you would a website or something, right? Or like a social media profile. So people are generally interested in just doing the research and looking into it before maybe they start working with us or hire a CAM or go through CAM school. People do actually look us up and make sure that the credibility is there, that we really are the experts, like we say. I think that is a game changer in terms of how people actually do react to us. We're getting a lot more cold leads, a lot more people kind of outside of our initial network that really rely on these pieces to understand what we do, understand us, the business, and then also that we're going to do a really great job and we have really great resources. I find the podcast really great for that, to be that credibility piece for Dot & Company.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, I think one of my favorite parts of our podcast is we get to interview really awesome agency owners and learn from them, where maybe we wouldn't normally get to chat with them, or it just gives us a reason to get on the phone with people who are doing really cool things in the agency or business world that we just want to learn from. So that's a really fun part.
And sometimes we talk to people and maybe client account management isn't the best fit, but they have a lot to offer. Why not have them on the podcast and kind of keep that relationship strong? There are different ways when you meet somebody how you can continue working together. It's great to have that option for sure. I'm not going to lie. I feel like people love being on any podcast.
Yeah. Well, if you know someone who should be on the Happy Clients podcast, definitely have them reach out to hello@dotandcompany.co and we'd be happy to have that conversation.
Totally.
Thanks for listening in. And if you are thinking about starting your own podcast, highly recommend it. It's very fun and you never know where it can take you.